As I was saying, back you have to understand the historical perspective on these things. Back in the 80s and 90s, development was very hot, and at that point, that was really the first really big wave that was the town of Yorktown felt. And we were at meetings until 4 o'clock in the morning, and there wasn't a property anywhere that wasn't being proposed for some type of development. And the town really needed to get a control and put control of what was going on, and it needed the time and it needed the space in order to take its collective breath and in order to properly review what was a real load of applications that came in. So what the town did, and rightfully, was to enact legislation to ensure that development was going to be orderly and it was going to be in the best interest of the town. These applications also presented a great source of revenue for the town. So the town decided at that point, if you look back, you'll see that a lot of the fee structures that were put in place were revised on almost on an annual or semi-annual basis in order to tap into what was the trend for development. And that served the town well. And it served the town well for a lot of years. But what you have now is that we're at the pendulum swung so far in the other direction, and these regulations are antiquated for what now is the town faces, which is really the necessary redevelopment of its commercial tax base. And what happens is these regulations are now onerous, burdensome, and expensive. And when someone is looking at their property and looking to redevelop their property, or a commercial enterprise is looking to come into the town, they don't look at the promises of the local politicos. They look at what the regulations will allow them and how the local politicos' discretion is going to be bounded. And because what may happen is if the torches and pitchfork crowd comes out on an application, then the politicals' support may disappear and start running in the other direction. So they want to look and see how the regulations bound the local discretionary approval boards. And that was what becomes important. So you have to look at the regulatory infrastructure that is what everyone else looks at before they come into or want to make an investment in the town. And the regulatory infrastructure in this town is antiquated. Not only antiquated, but it is counterproductive. And the recent legislation, which I talked about earlier, which is the fees, the support mandate, affordable housing set aside, et cetera, is all a continued progression in the wrong direction. So those are the things that have to change. And I think I'm fortunately or unfortunately in a unique position in that I understand what needs to be done, and I can articulate what needs to be done, and where I don't think that the present people have that experience or knowledge to understand what actually needs to occur. So and then have the political will to do it, and the political capital to make it happen. And I think I can bring all those things to bear.
And taking this interview full circle, Michael, at the beginning, I was asking you who are the people who have been pushing you to get involved in the race, which now you have done. I mean, do you have a campaign committee?
Yeah, well, I'm getting a little started a little bit late in the game, and there are reasons for that. But I think I was hopeful that at this point the slate of candidates that would be presented before the town, I would have confidence in in terms of making the right decisions, making the right moves, and changing the direction of the town. I don't think that's true. And I think that there is a lot of issues with with the alternative candidates.
When you say alternative candidates,
I mean, with the alternative choices that are out
between the two parties.
Yeah. And I think what's happening is, unfortunately, it's I don't think that, with all due respect to Susan Siegel, and it's a very difficult job, and it's a very thankless job, and I think it's a very difficult thing to put yourself out there all the time and subject yourself to criticism, ridicule, and I have no intention or desire to do that at all. I just don't think, I don't think she viscerally understands what needs to be done, and I want to see things change. If I thought that I could help the town in some other in approaching it in some other capacity, I would. And there's some people suggesting, well, when the time comes, maybe you should come back to be town attorney and give your advice in that capacity. The problem that I have with that is I don't have a voting voice as to what happens, and that would be frustrating for me. I think that the town needs to understand and needs somebody up there that understands what to do and how to do it. And I'll give you a really good example of that. And again, I imagine that the town has gotten the council in terms of drafting its escrow fund law, and it'd be curious to see if the council that they got in drafting the escrow fund law is the same council that is now benefiting from the escrow fund law. In other words, is that the attorney that is now getting the fees that the town's mandating from the applicant? So I go in and I draft the law saying, look, we're going to do escrow fees, and what you're going to do now is going to hire me, and when an applicant comes in, you take the fee from them and you give it to me, and this is the law I'm going to propose for you to do. And this is the kind of stuff that goes on, that I think is where things start to go awry, and the bottom line is that I think I have a unique set of experiences and knowledge in the history of this town, and not only that, but as to what is really is the fundamental constitutional limitations of local government over property owners, and that is something that we need to constantly stay cognizant of, and because it's just the fundamental principles, and I say, and as long as we keep focused on what are the fundamental principles, keep focused on what our goals are, which I think should be, the absolute preservation of the town's beauty, but that town's beauty includes not only the living environment, but it also very much includes our business environment, our commercial environment. And the reason why I say that as well is our small businesses employ those people who come up to this town and they want to live here. They're moms who have children at home, want their part-time jobs, want to be close to their children, and this is what keeps the community vibrant. What also keeps the community vibrant is that the community, maintains its people and generationally. And what I mean by that is that we want a town where our children can afford to live in, and our children can remain in, because that keeps the historical continuity and the character of the town over the long term. And we're doing things that are going to be hurdles to that hinder that, and are not promoting that in the long term. And we need to change direction. And a lot of that directional change is subtle, it's small, and it's not turning an ocean liner around, but it does take some skill, it takes some knowledge, and it takes some political willpower.
Now, of course, as in any political campaign or activity, there are people, as you know, who don't want to see you run. I mean, they want, the endorsed candidate for the Republicans just to, not have any challenge. And so as I'm sure you've heard yourself, they're questioning your reasons for running and your motives and why is he, getting in late. And one of the things that's come up, I know, is saying, well, instead of practicing law, maybe Michael Grace just wants to have, a guaranteed position in town hall with, all of the perks and the guaranteed salary. And you know, and he doesn't have to worry about getting clients. I mean, how do you respond to that?
Oh, look, how do I respond to that? You know, I respond to that. It's nonsense. You know what? I hemmed and hawed about this because I almost need it like a second hole in the head. You know, I have a vibrant law practice. I have a vibrant law practice that takes me. I've done trial work from Buffalo to Staten Island. I enjoy it, but I moved into this town. I moved up here in 1985. I became part of the Yorktown town government, so to speak, by being that town attorney in 1987. I ran my practice while being in the capacity of town attorney and the litigation counsel. And actually, if you look back, you'll see that I did a lot of the work. We retained litigation counsel for the town of Yorktown at a very, very, very modest retainer. Matter of fact, I think when I left, their legal budget tripled or quadrupled after I left. And I did it because I always
But because of what? Of the salary of your successor? Or?
Yeah. And what they had to pay to replace me. I think I used to do the work. You know, they ended up hiring 3 or 4 attorneys for doing the work that I was doing. I always felt that it was a way to remain involved in my community. I feel obligated to return, you know, something back to my community, to be civically involved, et cetera, et cetera. Why am I running? Because I feel passionate about it. I hear the town is just going off in the wrong direction. I am a commercial property owner in here. I live here. I have 7 kids under my roof. I came to this community, looking at this community. It was a beautiful place to live. It had great opportunity. It presented itself as just, you know, really one of the finest places probably to live in this country. And it really is sad. It's like that old movie Back to the Future. You come back to your own neighborhood and you see, you know, it's the instead of the sagebrush blowing in the wind, it's the old newspapers blowing in the wind. It really breaks my heart to look at the center of town. You have a major shopping center that's vacant. The Food Emporium left. Well, you know what? The town needs to be proactive in that, because at one point in time, as for instance, the A&P was investigated by the AG's office, and it was found to have a monopoly on grocery stores in the town of Yorktown. So they had to give up one of their grocery stores. They ended up giving it, which is now Turco's. In giving it up, they ended up with more square footage of retail shopping space than they had before they gave up the Turco store. And now A&P is in bankruptcy and in trouble. You got one Food Emporium,
which was owned by A&P.
Oh, A&P, yeah, A&P, right? And now is vacant. And now you may have, if the A&P actually, Super A&P goes out of business, you'll be doing your shopping in Mount Kisco or in Peekskill. And it just goes on and on and on. And the thing is, it doesn't take a lot of effort. It's not going to take a lot of work to change things around, but it takes some knowledge. It takes some understand what you're doing and what the consequences of what you're doing. That's where I'm looking to go. I am not, I promise you, looking to make a career out of this. And I think that's sort of what you have, which is unique in this election. You have some candidates that they are experienced small business people, and that's what you need. DeCharo is one. Dave Paganelli is one. They are not career politicians, and I don't believe they ever want to be career politicians. I don't think if you talk to Dave Paganelli, he's looking to give up his restaurant business, or he needs the stipend from being town councilman, and that's why he's doing it. Essentially, I think these are. I think if you have your finger to the pulse of what's going on out in the town, you'll understand that people are just frustrated. They really are frustrated. They're tired of the way business is being done, has been done, and prospectively, looks like it's the way it's going to continue. And the town does need some changes. It has to get rid of the old, the entrenched culture which exists. And if you really look back at historically, what our forefathers used to think of what would be the statesman would always be the guy that contributed to his community and went back and became the gentleman farmer. It was George. I think the English always were amazed that George Washington, he could have been king, but he decided to go back to his Mount Vernon farm. He could, and that's exactly what has always been the American tradition. We shouldn't have to have term limits. Our politicians should be intelligent enough to know to get out. And that's really what it's about. We should all be looking to contribute.